Hey guys, this is Ken McElroy, and you are listening to the Mailbox Money Show with Bronson Hill.
So I love owning private businesses, primarily because they offer a lot of cash flow. And we know there's a lot of boomers that are retiring. There's people that don't want to have businesses. And when we can approach businesses as these are things that can produce cash flow in my life, it can be life changing. The idea of owning a mailbox store or UPS type store is a very unique niche that Lisa has done incredibly well with. She has students that do this, and to be able to produce 500K to a million in revenue per year is really phenomenal. And so usually it's about a 50% margin business. So it's just something I want you to have an open mind, whether you are an active investor and you want to do something like this yourself, or you're passive, or you're like, hey, I've got a nephew, I've got a son, I've got a relative that could do something like this, or a daughter. You could basically find a way to do a project like this with a relative or a friend or a partner. So let's jump in. I think you're really going to enjoy this episode with Lisa. She's a former Miss Nevada. She's got all kinds of different things, businesses that she's done, including a bakery and different things, and just really done very, very well in a lot of different areas. Well, Lisa, welcome to the Mailbox Money Show. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's so good to have you. We're both speaking at the Limitless Commerce Conference recently with our friend Ken McElroy, and such a great event, such great networking. I've admired your journey. I mean, you've been the Miss Nevada a number of years ago. You're a lawyer, trained lawyer as well, and you have this niche that you've created that really is a high cash flowing business that a lot of people really aren't aware of. And I'd love for you just to kind of give our audience an introduction of your background and kind of what it is that you do and how you create value through these mailbox stores.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Background, as you mentioned, started in law and worked in litigation and business bankruptcy. And then started my first company while I was still working at the firm full time. And that was a bakery, actually. And so jumped right into that, had that for 11 years. But during that time, I realized, wow, I can have my own company as long as I team up with an operations partner. So I kept using that same model, started replicating that across various industries, real estate, food and beverage, venture capital, but the mailboxes, like you mentioned. So I started my own independent mailbox rental pack and ship stores in 2018. Think like a UPS store, but independent. So they service UPS, FedEx, and the Postal Service. And that was just simply born out of the fact that I was a patron where I had a mailbox that I rented from a local UPS store for years and years because I utilized it as a mailing address, another business address. And I was like, what is this business model? Because I would get auto charged. My credit card would get auto charged every year
Right.
for this mailbox, right? And I
Yeah.
would get the receipt and I was just like, I don't really use it that much. Maybe I should cancel it. And then I never would cancel it. And so I was like, what, years and years go by, right? So I was like, what is this business model? Um, so I initially had started looking to buy a UPS franchise just to diversify my business holdings, real estate holdings. And I actually knew I had a colleague who owned 3 UPS stores in another state in California. So I called him and I said, Greg, tell me about this business model. And he was like, he'd had them for like a decade, these stores. And he was like, it's great. He's like, here's what's interesting though. The mailboxes are the steady recurring revenue. He's like, think of those as like mini storage units. Steady recurring revenue, you essentially have a tenant in place, right? You have someone who's renting this mailbox. Um, and then your shipping is ancillary and seasonal. Like holiday shipping, for example, you'll make 40% of your annual revenue in holiday shipping, right? So he was like, the mailboxes are really that steady, consistent, recurring revenue. That's what's going to keep your lights on. That's what pays your staff.
Hmm.
He said, here's the problem. If you call any of my stores right now and say, hi, I'm a new mailbox customer, I want to rent a mailbox. He's like, I don't even have one to give you because I'm
Hmm.
maxed out. And I was like, that's interesting. Why can't you just put in more mailboxes in your store? And he's like, because I'm a franchise. He was like, the franchise dictates my floor plan.
Oh
So
man.
he had whatever, 300 boxes or something like that, 310 boxes or something. And so he was like, that's it. Like, I can't reconfigure the store, put in more mailboxes. So he was like, if I were you, he's like, I'd look into maybe the independent model, because the UPS franchise is going to cost me about $250,000 because I'm in Las Vegas in an urban area, right? So he's like, look at the independent model and maybe just start your own store. And I was like, oh my gosh, the light bulb went off. I realized I was a patron of an independent store down the street from my house in Summerlin, a place called Postal Pros that I had just equated as a UPS store. I think you just think of them
Mhm.
as UPS stores, right? But it
Right.
was actually, in fact, an independent store. And it was where I would go drop off my Amazon returns and eBay stuff and whatever. And so I was like, okay. So I went to that store to Andrew, to the owner there, who I'd been his patron for years, right? And I said, hey, would you want to expand this store like to another part of town? And he was like, no. I was like, okay. He said, well, I think I'm going to open up one of these stores. Would you let me pay you $10,000 to follow you around for like 2 weeks? And capture processes and see if I can do one myself. And he was just like, you are so crazy. And he was like, okay, fine. And so I did. And then I ended up opening up my own stores in 2018.
Wow. That's amazing. Well, one thing I love that you did about that, well, a couple of things I love that you found something that you were using and you saw a need there. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to do this thing that's totally different. I have no idea that, just you had a knowledge of because you were a consumer of it. So you had a knowledge of what it was. And then you asked a lot of good questions. You were saying, hey, well, you talked to some of the franchise owners of UPS or well, I can't expand, I can't do more. And then you kind of went down the rabbit trail and then you found a mentor that really helped you to really be able to launch. And I think for a lot of us, we just kind of see things. We see businesses. I mean, there's a lot of businesses out there, even people that want to buy businesses that are existing, or instead of creating. I'm sure there's different ways to do this, and we just don't think that these are things that we're using, and maybe there's a need to be able to start more or create more. So that's really awesome. So you had the bakery background, and then you moved to this. What was, I guess, in that process of you opening your first one, what were some surprises for you as you did that? Because obviously you started a business, like you don't know quite what to expect, no matter how much research you've done.
Oh yes, and even I really appreciate that I was able to actually train. I trained hands-on in his store, literally, every day 9 to 6,
Yeah.
at his store for 2 weeks. So much so that folks thought I was a new hire there, right? So I was literally training in this store.
You're like, no, I'm actually paying to be here. I'm paying $1,000 a day to be here.
I'm paying. Yeah, I am paying to be here. It's funny. Yeah, some guy like pulled me aside and he was like, he's like, you're too pretty to work at a shipping store. And I was like, thanks. Like, so it was just, I literally was in the store working day in and day out. Because for me, I looked at it as like the 10,000 as an investment, right? Instead of paying 250, I was like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna pay 10. And I think I know what this business model is, but I'm gonna find out pretty quick working here even in a week if this business model is what I think it is, right? And
Yeah.
obviously I was seeing the volume, I was seeing the daily sales, and I was realizing that there were 3 people running the store. And I was like, this is gonna be great. If I can get to this point, right? I knew
Mhm.
starting from scratch, it's always slow, but I was like, if I can get to this point, it's gonna be great. Surprises for me, I think just realizing this is a customer service job, right? This is general retail. It's a customer service job. So really, who's your competition? The post office, which no one, at least no one around here likes going to the post
Oh,
office.
it's a terrible experience
Yeah,
every
it's a
time.
terrible experience. Yeah, yeah. You're waiting forever. They're
Yeah.
losing stuff. I mean, who knows, right?
Yeah.
Um, the UPS store, uh, but then the UPS store, they don't service FedEx, for example,
Yeah.
right? So if you have a FedEx drop off or if you need a FedEx label, it's not going to be possible for you going to
Right.
a UPS store. You still got to make 2 stops, right? So I liked that, like I knew that going in, but I didn't realize how convenient it was for the customer until I started having folks come who were like relieved. They were like, oh,
Mhm.
I can also drop this off here too. Or like, oh, you'll also take my Amazon, UPS label, and I have a FedEx Express. Like I can just bring it all here in one stop. And we're like, yeah. And I can buy some stamps. It was a nice surprise to realize that. But I think probably the biggest surprise I had in starting the stores, I started 2 stores, one in kind of like a suburb area of town in the Southwest, and one up by Nellis Air Force Base. Um, and the area that's right outside the base is low income, predominantly African American, definitely a very different side of town compared to the suburb area or a Summerlin area. And the very first customers we had the day we opened our doors at that location were these 2 little old ladies who live in the apartments across the street. They were so excited to have a place to buy stamps. They're like hugging us because without us, they'd take a bus
Oh,
to the closest post office. And and it was just a total realization and surprise that like, especially these types of stores, it's very community driven. It's hyper local. That's why you can have several of them in it, even in a dense area, because they service a very, very hyper local community.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I have one down the street from me, and I'll go over there. It's a UPS store, and but it'd be nice to have more variety or more things there because sometimes I'm like, I don't want to ship that, or it's just the price of shipping a bunch of stuff out is, be able to compare. As there's some advantages there. But yeah, let's go back to something you said about you identified having locations that can have more mailboxes, and that being a way that you could generate more kind of the recurring revenue or the subscription revenue.
Mhm.
I guess for you, as you've been running this, I think you, like I said, I don't, you were in the store on this interview, another interview, you were saying you were in there for a year or more, just like day in, day out. So let's say if someone's listening and they're like, "Hey, I want to do this. And I know you have a teaching or program where you teach people how to do this in different markets all across the country. And I've talked to some of your students and they're loving it. But how passive is this approach? Is it something that somebody could buy and or I guess not necessarily buy a location or create a location and actually once they get it set up, be more passive in it, or they have to kind of be in the business? Let them know kind of just how you perceive it after been doing this for a while.
Yeah. So, I mean, now that granted, this is 6 years in, I've certainly been able to scale up and scale out. And I spend probably less than 10 hours a month
Mm,
on the stores. And that's just, kind of helping where I need to, or, picking up keys or just kind of running around. But I do have an operations partner with the store. And I originally, when we had first started, that was my initial plan was because at the time I still owned the bakery actually when I first started this. I had the real estate brokerage, I have all these things. So I was like, oh, I'll team up with an operations partner, which is my usual MO anyway. And great, Sarah will run the day-to-day at the store. Little did I know we were going to open a second store within 3 months of opening the first store. So like that wasn't the original plan.
wasn't the plan.
It wasn't the plan originally. Where then she was running one store and I was running one store, and then we were like trying to hire two. But yes, the short answer to your question is yes, you absolutely. The point is, you need someone to open the store and run the store and close the store each
Right.
day, right?
Right.
So if that's not you, who is it? Is it someone you hire? Is it someone you partner with that has equity in the company? Maybe it's sweat equity they're earning. Who is it, right? Is someone physically, you need at least one person, right, to actually run the store, receive mail, all the things, right? It is a retail store. It's a brick and mortar location. So someone's got to be in there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so I guess if I'm a passive investor and I'm full time in that, is I guess like you said, you can have someone do it. Are there ways to invest passively in this where somebody doesn't want to do it, where they're just like, hey, someone has a fund that does this kind of thing, or you partner with operators and just kind of like, hey, I'll be an investor to kind of help it build out or help some of that. I mean, does those things exist sometimes?
Yeah, totally partner up like JV, right? Where
Yeah.
partner up with an operator. There's plenty of folks out there who do want to, have these stores, get their foot in the door with it and operate them. The nice thing is the startup cost is low. So whether you acquire one, which obviously that's a range on the purchase price, right? But I mean, I started two stores with less than $60,000 and I
Wow.
started them from scratch, right? So just like any small business, it's going to take a year or so to build up your clientele, right? Retrain the neighborhood to come to you because right now they're going somewhere else to buy their stamps and drop off their mail and get packages, whatever. But once you have them, assuming that you're not losing people's mail, assuming that you're doing like a B+ job on customer service, your customers are so sticky, and your mailbox customers in particular are so sticky. So not only do they come to you as mailbox customers, now they come to you for all their shipping, they come to you for their notary, they come to you for their copies, they come to you for their faxes. Like you really build a very, very sticky base of clientele. And these stores, that's why some of these stores that you might even know of, they're around for so long, and landlords love these types of
Yeah.
stores because they're just there forever.
Yeah. And sometimes I know, like, I actually had somebody who was going to do, actually, I think it was one of your students. They were talking about negotiating with like a bicycle store. I won't say who it is, but they were going to like try to get some space. This bicycle store is a huge store and they had actually like an area where they were can kind of build out. And I said, well, one way to talk to these guys that own the bicycle stores, hey, it's going to bring a whole bunch of traffic into your
Yeah.
bike store because like these things people are just in and out of all the time. So, the
Quick.
donut shop next door, the CVS next door, the one I love, like they're going to get a lot more business. So, like you said, they love them. They're very, very stable. What kind of revenue do some of these stores do? I mean, what's kind of a range? I know you have smaller stores or bigger stores, but what's kind of ideal?
Yeah, I mean, anywhere but I think a normal competent operator could expect by year 3 to be doing anywhere between 250,000 to 500,000 top line gross. However,
Yeah.
this is a 50% margin business. Like
Yeah.
I realized after owning a bakery, owning real estate brokerage, all these different things, part of why I was so intrigued by this business model was because this is low staff. You can run it as little as one person in the store. Not recommended
Yeah.
if it's busy, right? But you could run it as little as one person. I don't need to deal with the health department. I'm not dealing with a perishable product. I'm not dealing with nights and weekends. Literally, like we're open Monday through Saturday, 9 to 6. We're closed on Sundays. We're closed major holidays. Like it is
Yeah.
the most low drama business that I've ever had in 14 years of business.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, once in a while you get people shipping strange things, or you got to ask them, is there anything sharp in the box or any
But you have
gum in the
to, yeah, if
box?
someone comes in, it's already boxed up. You have to ask, hey,
Yeah.
what are we shipping today? Right. And if their
Yeah.
answer is like, I'm shipping a gun, and you're like, well, we can, let's talk
You
about that,
probably shouldn't
and
do that. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. That
or
might
like
catch.
illegal drugs, like let's talk about that, right?
Yeah.
So you do have to ask if it's already sealed up. But in over 6 years of business, I think we've only had maybe like one or two times where it was like sketchy, or you could smell it, like you could smell
Yeah.
marijuana like seeping out of this bubble mailer, and you're like, I'm going to ask you again what's inside the
Yeah.
package.
Maybe you shouldn't ship this because it may be out of my hands. What's
It's
going
gonna
to
get
happen to
yeah,
you?
it's
Yeah.
gonna get stopped somewhere, and you're gonna come back and be mad at me, like
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, let's just a few more questions. Let's talk about trends in this space. Every asset is different. I look at this, this show, we kind of talk about different assets and how you evaluate things. And we have, like I mentioned earlier, before we start recording, we have an offer out on an e-commerce business that does a lot of revenue, and we're going back and forth on that. But what are some trends that you're seeing in this space? I mean, people say, oh, we're going to get out of this. And I know there's a lot more home delivery stuff and pickups. And I mean, what do you see? Like, what's the growth areas of it, and what are some of the risks involved as far as getting involved in a business like this?
well, we experienced that it's pandemic proof. We were open the entire duration of that.
Essential. Yeah.
Essential, right? and
Yeah.
and we had realized, because this was, so roll it back all the way to March of 2020. Our governor at the time shut down the strip, like the Las Vegas strip. Like Las
Yeah.
Vegas strip doesn't close, right? It's not designed to close,
I went through there May of 2020, and I had a friend who'd never been to Vegas. We're going to stop by, and only like Rite Aid and CVS were open, and everything else was shut down. It
No,
was crazy. It was
it was
crazy.
crazy. It was so crazy. It was a crazy time in Las Vegas. And so we, no one knew what was going on really, but we just knew that, like, schools are closed, all these things, that they just shut down the strip. And so what we did was we shortened our hours, because we said, well, because we realized the carriers were still coming. I mean, they were coming in with masks and gloves and all this stuff, but they were still coming in to drop off mail for our mailbox customers. So we're like, well, we need to be open long enough at least to accept the mail, because otherwise the door's locked. They can't get in.
Yeah.
And then we were like, well, we need to be open long enough for our mailbox customers to come pick up their stuff, because we realized, guess what was increasing? Packages, shipping, right?
Yeah.
Everyone was just now ordering stuff. And then not even 2 weeks later, we went back to full blown regular hours, because
Amazing.
the carriers never stopped coming. People still needed their mail. And in fact, we had an increase in shipping and in shipping revenue in
Sure.
2020 to 2019, because, everyone, now it's a new norm.
Yeah.
Everyone gets their stuff delivered to them now. More people wanted a business address, that kind of thing. I would say, kind of for me, like, I guess the cons in this business is that it is low drama, but maybe like once a quarter of like the hundreds and thousands of packages that your store will touch, right? The carrier will lose someone's package. It's not your fault, right? UPS,
Right.
FedEx, Postal Service, along the way, they are going to lose someone's package somewhere along the route. And it's shipped out from your store, and so
Yeah.
it's annoying, right? So
Right.
your customers freaking out because they're like, I've been tracking it and it's like stuck in LA, it's not updating, or it'll just say on there that it's like, destroyed, or it'll say something like dramatic, and you're like, oh, brother,
Struck him by lightning and lit on
yes,
fire, and you're like,
yeah, struck
what?
down, and you're like, what? So they come into you because of course they shipped it from your store, and they're upset. So you do have to work with the carriers to, at least if it shows it's destroyed or lost en route, you can work with the carriers to try to get a postage refund back, just things like that, but then it becomes down to like an insurance issue where like you do want to make sure when you first start doing the shipment to remember to ask, hey, like, is this something valuable?
Yeah.
Because that's always a risk, because after it leaves
Right.
the store, it's not in our hands.
Yeah, that could be. I'm sure you get the family heirloom. Something happens, and stuff happens, and it's just it's not your fault, but then you're the messenger, and so people see that. I want you to talk about your course and how people can learn more about this in a minute here. But you're a serial entrepreneur. You've done multiple things. You've got your brokerage. You've got the bakery. You had the bakery, sounds like, and now you've got the stores, and you're training people to do this. Do you have any other things that you're doing or considering doing beyond this? I know this keeps you pretty busy with what you're doing.
Yeah, the only other thing that I do have on my plate, and I believe it or not, this has all been whittled down from like 7 endeavors to like 3 main ones.
I love it.
Actually, thanks to Ken, he helped me do a clarifying exercises years ago. But a venture capital fund called the Veteran Fund. We invest in early stage technology
Yeah.
companies that are focused on national security and dual use,
Oh
and they
wow.
must have a veteran or military spouse on the leadership team. So it's been awesome. It's been about 2 years now. We're a $20 million fund, made about
Wow.
15 investments so far. And just with the way the world's going too, like it's important for me. I'm the only one who's not a veteran on the GP team. There's 4 of us total, but I come from a military family. My dad was Vietnam vet, Air Force, and then DoD while I was growing up. And my fiance's a Air Force pilot, fighter pilot, and so that community is super important to me. And you have these really incredible high level operators, right? I mean, former Navy SEALs, former Green Berets, former fighter pilots, like high level folks from the military who at 38, 39, 42 years old get told by our government that they're too broken to
Mm,
be of use anymore, right? We're forcing you to retire.
mm.
And what do you do, right? What, you can do a job at Home Depot? I mean, it's so wild that there's not more of like a support system around like, how do you take these very high level operators and like, what do they do now? Right?
Yeah.
What do they go do now? Because getting into private sector is a shock anyway, right?
Yeah.
And so I love that, we are funding the tech that's being developed by these veterans who are creating what they wish they would have had when they were boots on the ground in Iraq, Afghanistan, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's all very timely and all very important.
I love it.
So I love
Love,
it.
yeah, love the cause. That's amazing that you're involved with that. I think that's really wonderful. And I love all the value you're adding. I've just heard, from a number of your students, people around, just what you're doing. So really, I really admire that. How can people hear about more about this topic, about your course? You have students that do this. How can people connect with you and find you?
Yeah, so you just find me on social at Lisa Song-Sutton. And then with the course, which like I fought this tooth and nail because I was like, oh, I'm not a course person, you know what I mean? I was like, I have
Yeah.
no businesses, like I'm not putting courses online. Um, I've like created this course because of a lot of feedback from folks all around the country who were like, how can I do this myself? And I was answering one-off emails and I was like, this is not efficient use of my time. And so I created a course called the Mailbox Money Course. So mailboxmoneycourse.com.
That's so funny. There's a mailbox money show, and you have the
Yes, no,
mailbox
it's
money
yeah,
course.
literally the Mailbox Money
That's
Course.
awesome.
And yeah, started it a year ago. So last summer, so a little bit more than a year ago. Last summer was when we launched it. And now we have over 40 students who have actually gone on to either open or acquire their own store. Like it's up and
Wow.
live operating to this day, right?
Incredible.
So
Amazing.
yeah, it's like birthing small business owners, which I think is really important anyway. And so it's really special. And we have a community. We meet once a week. And it's awesome. Like it's one of the highlights of my week that I get to participate in it.
That's great. Well, Lisa, I really appreciate what you're doing. It's nice to see you've developed different niches, and they say the riches are in the niches. So well done with that. So grateful for you. We'll have to connect more. I look forward to the next Limitless. Hopefully, we'll see you if I get to Vegas or find some reason to hang out. I know we're part of a kind of a similar entrepreneurs group, so we'll have to connect some more. But thanks so much for being with our audience today. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so this is a great interview. I really enjoyed just the sharing and kind of the process that Lisa went through. I think one of the biggest things when you buy a business is you have to ask really good questions and really try to figure out where the growth potential is. It's like a value add deal in multifamily, but it's for a business. And where she talked about, having the mailboxes. If you only can have 50 mailboxes, it limits the amount of revenue you have. But if you can build out and you can have 100 mailboxes or hundreds of mailboxes, those all generate recurring revenue, which is awesome. So it's basically this subscription model, not necessarily an online subscription, but an in-person subscription that allows for lots of revenue. I love that it took $60K or less than $60K to start 2 locations. So this is not a lot of money down. It's a little bit of sweat equity. And she did work in the business for a while, but she was able to find people to hire to kind of manage a lot of it for her. And like she said, it's a very, as Cody Sanchez would say, it's a boring business, right? Buying boring businesses is an awesome way to go. So I would love to know what you found in value in this episode. I'd love for you to share this with a friend. If you haven't joined our investment club, BronsonEquity.com, we are buying businesses. We're actually in the process of negotiating, at least at the time we're recording this, buying a business that we're going to be able to hopefully offer to our investment community. So if you haven't joined our investment community, you're not hearing about real estate deals, our business deals, oil and gas, other types of deals. So go to the link below or BronsonEquity.com/join, and we'll be able to set up a call with you. Thanks for taking the time to educate yourself. We'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Mailbox Money Show. You've been listening to the Mailbox Money Podcast. For more free resources, articles, and videos, go to BronsonEquity.com. There you can download your copy of the special report, The Single Best Investment Strategy During and After a Pandemic. None of the information shared here is an offer to buy a specific investment, and this is for educational purposes only. Consult your financial, legal, and tax professionals and use your own common sense before making any investment decisions. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to tune in next time for more Mailbox Money.